Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my latest team preview video. We are keeping the ball rolling. This is team number 6 that I am working on today, which is the Philadelphia Eagles. Just in case we have any new listeners to my team preview series, I'm going to give a quick rundown of what you can expect in this video. If you've watched some of my videos before, feel free to skip ahead about a minute or so. So you can go ahead and get into this one. But really quick for any new listeners, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this whole roster. I'm going to break it down by the offense. I'm going to break it down by the defense and give you my overall feeling at the end of the episode. Now, this is also coming from a fantasy football perspective as well. So when I am covering the offense, I do go a little more in depth on the offense because I will speak about those fantasy football relevant players as far as my feelings if I'm trying to acquire them on my roster and whatnot. And one last little caveat, a couple things. The projected starters, it's pulled from the Prospect Encyclopedia. That is a project I've been a part of the last 2 years. Basically, quick rundown. All 32 teams in that Prospect Encyclopedia have a top 22 player list. And those top 22 players consist of prospects from the last 3 draft classes that only have less than 12 regular season career starts. So those are either rookies, maybe a 1 or 2 year veteran. We won't call them veterans, but guys in their year 1, year 2. Maybe they're kind of growing into the role and what you can expect for them coming up this season. And it's definitely something you guys should pre-order. That's going to be coming out here in the next week or so. So definitely get it pre-ordered so you can read those great scouting reports. But I'm gonna go ahead and get into this video, starting with the Eagles coaching staff. That they changed coach. Everybody knows the story. They moved on from Doug Peterson. They moved on from Carson Wentz. I don't have to go into that. But they have hired Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni was the offensive coordinator for the Colts last year. And we really don't know much about him. And I'm a Colts fan. And I don't really know much about him, but he always impressed me from whenever I got a chance to listen to him in his press conferences. You always would hear the players speak about him, so I think he can relate to players. But there is a slight concern: is he ready for a role like this right now? He never called play calls in Indianapolis. Frank Reich handled all that. I'll be honest, I'm not positive if he's going to take over play calling in Philadelphia or if he's going to be more of the CEO and let somebody else do that. But I think he's got the makeups of a good coach. I thought maybe he was more, I would say probably like a year to 3 years away from maybe getting interviews, but this was so surprising that he ended up getting this job, and it was a nice sign to see him get interviews now. I thought maybe he would get a job in maybe 1 to 2 years. Now, as far as if it's going to translate to wins, I'm not sure. This is going to be a rough year, I think, for Philadelphia, just by doing my research last night and looking deeper into this roster. But I think people should give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he can relate to these players and get them to play for him. But I do I do have my worries, like I have with David Culley. I do feel like maybe he might be a bridge coach because I'm not sure if this doesn't get turned around in the next 1 to 3 years. Who knows if they fire Howie Roseman and they blow up everything in the Philadelphia organization and completely restart it all there. So we'll have to see how that unfolds for him. But let's take a look at currently the remaining cap space that they have heading into the year and some notable guys entering a contract year. As of right now, they have the third least remaining cap space at $2.5 million. So basically, they're not going to make any more probably in any additions this year. And then on top of that, they're probably not going to be giving out any contract extensions. And they're only, like, when I looked at it last night, they're only projected, believe for like 11 or 12 million in 2022. And as you can see, they got a number of guys they can maybe consider giving a contract or extension, or maybe wanting to re-sign after this year. And I know this is kind of off topic, but looking at, I'm not a salary cap guru. I can look at the numbers, I can kind of give you my good idea on it, but I just don't know how they would acquire Deshaun Watson. They are one of the teams that might trade for Deshaun Watson because they have those 3 first-round draft picks. But I don't know how that's going to work out as far as salary cap wise. That's why those guys are great at what they do with the salary cap. But yeah, notable guys entering their contract year. Zach Ertz, we all know that everybody thought he would be traded before the season. It sounds like he's going to be at least suiting up training camp and maybe at least suiting up week 1 for the Eagles. But he's a guy to watch. Like, maybe the Eagles are trying to be competitive, for the playoffs. Every team's trying to be competitive right now. But once they get into the season, if things fall apart really quick early in the season, now that's a guy where if a team needs a tight end and they're making a push for the playoffs, he's a guy to watch around this between now and the trade deadline. Dallas Goedert, like that's a guy like I'm going to talk about later as well. He's a guy like I was really high on when he came into the league. He was my number 1 tight end in his draft class. He's produced with Zach Ertz on the opposite side of him. He's the future of their tight end position. So that's a guy I'm like, well, they need to figure out maybe if they can somehow figure out a contract extension before this season. They need to do it now. Maybe they have to slap him on the franchise tag and figure out the whole cap thing because Philadelphia is basically in cap hell for these next 2 seasons. And then Jordan Mailata, I think I said that right. He's their left tackle. So they either got to hope Andre Dillard really steps up in his play. Otherwise, he's probably going to have to be moved on. Derek Barnett probably moves on in free agency, as well as Ronnie McLeod, Avonte Maddox, and Josh Sweat. Don't expect any of those guys to receive any contract extensions before the season. And then again, like outside of maybe Dallas Goedert and like Jordan Mailata, because he's currently projected as their starting left tackle, unless Andre Dillard beats him out in training camp. These are some names to maybe watch because if Philadelphia isn't winning before the trade deadline, I wouldn't not be surprised if they try to get rid of some of their guys and acquire draft capital for the upcoming draft class. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and keep this moving. I'm gonna take a look at the offensive starters and the notable backups. Again, just to repeat this, these are projected starters from the Prospect Encyclopedia. The Eagles section was written by Jack Dispo. You can follow him at Jack_Dispo. Really great writer, really good talent evaluator. He's somebody. This was my first time working with him. I kind of got a chance to interact with him quite a bit during this whole process. So he's a really great guy. Make sure you go give him a follow. He definitely knows what he's talking about in terms of talent evaluation. So the Draft Bible over there, they got a good one in Jack. But I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the quarterback position. What we're going to start with is Jalen Hurts. Jalen is a guy that's going to finally get his, not finally, but he's going to get his shot to prove that he can be an NFL quarterback, barring maybe a Deshaun Watson trade. He's going to get a shot to prove that he can be the guy for Philadelphia. He doesn't have he doesn't have like an overwhelming arm talent. He can struggle working the ball down the field. He can struggle working the ball outside the boundary. But I mean, if you can design the offense around his skill set, I mean, we saw in those like 4 games he got a start in. He can move the ball. He's good. He's decent enough in the short to intermediate route running. I mean, routes. He's good at those ones. And then he's got his ability with his legs. And Jalen's the guy, like, I got a chance to, be around him at the Senior Bowl when he was during that draft process. And that guy just exudes leadership. He might not have the ultimate talent that you want in a quarterback, but he's going to push himself. He's going to push his abilities to be the best quarterback that he can be for Philadelphia. So, I mean, he's going to give his all. I just don't have high expectations. Like, I always thought he could be a good, solid, decent starting quarterback, and definitely be a really good backup to have because he can come in and move the chains with his speed. And he's a smart kid, and he's a good leader. He's somebody that you'd want in your quarterback locker room. And I'd like to see if maybe he can have a shot to prove himself as a long-term starter. Now, obviously, as far as fantasy, he might not be the greatest starting quarterback in the NFL, but he's definitely a guy maybe you can consider drafting in your fantasy draft because he can move the ball with his legs. That offers him a higher floor as a quarterback. My biggest concern, though, with him is if this whole Philadelphia offense, we really don't know what it's going to look underneath Nick Sirianni. And I mean, he's got really young wide receivers, but he's got his 2 tight ends I think he could depend upon. I have worries about how consistent this offense is going to be. But I mean, I could see people drafting him, but I think he's going a little too high for me where he is going right now in drafts for me to be too that comfortable drafting him there. He's a guy I would want to try to get into double digit rounds if I could. And then, yeah, if he gets hurt at all, I mean, you're talking about an older veteran, Joe Flacco, as is that, and a young, guy that's got starts in him in Nick Mullins. Guys that are not getting really excited. I'm not sure if they're going to let Flacco or Mullins battle it out for the backup job, but that's who they have currently as we are getting these training camps underway. Um, Moving on to the running back position, though, Miles Sanders. Man, if there's a guy I am so excited about on this Philadelphia team heading into the year, it's Miles Sanders. It's a guy I've really liked. He's been up and down in his first two seasons since he's entered the league. Some games you're like, what is he doing? And some games he just absolutely blows up. But he's been very productive since he's entered the league. Again, he's only been in the league for 2 years. Here's some stats I pulled for those that are first-time listeners to these team preview videos. I like to collect the sample size of the last 3 seasons as far as production. So here's some stats I pulled on Miles Sanders this summer. Miles Sanders is one of 9 running backs that have averaged 50 plus rushing yards per game and 25 plus receiving yards per game since 2018. So if he continues to do that and he doesn't have to deal with any injuries this year, he got a really high floor as long as he's going to be dominating those touches out of the Philadelphia backfield. And then on top of that, he has the 5th most rushing yards per attempt at 4.91, and he has the 5th most yards per reception since 2018. He gets 9 yards per reception, so he's very effective when he has the ball in his hand. I just want to see him finally dominate the touches out of the backfield. But see, that's the thing, though, that I'm going to take a chance on Miles Sanders this year because I think he's like in that RB3, RB2 range. And if he really hits his ceiling, this is a guy that can be an RB1 for you. I really do believe he has the talent to do so. My biggest concerns is, Nick Sirianni with the Colts, he used a rotational backfield for the last 3 years. Even last year, before Marlon Mack got hurt, he was going to use Mack, Taylor, and Nyheim Hines. So I do wonder if he's going to do that in Philadelphia. They do have Boston Scott in the back as a backup. He's kind of like a Nyheim Hines, a poor man's Nyheim Hines for Philadelphia. They signed Kerryon Johnson from the Lions. Yeah, his career has he's dealt with injuries. He's been inconsistent, but here's one good stat on him. Since 2018, he actually has the 8th most yards per reception at 8.64. Now, I don't expect him to get a lot of touches, but I think they're going to maybe give him a few touches a game. Again, though, I am totally comfortable taking Miles Sanders. I think the guy has all the talent in the world to be the lead dog in this backfield. He's produced when he's on the field, so he's a guy I'm definitely trying to get on my rosters this year. Then you take a look at their wide receivers. I mean, it's a decent group, but it's going to be dependent on how well these guys play. Devontae Smith is just an absolute beast of a route runner. He's going to be the guy that can get open for Jalen Hurts. I'm not sure how many plays they got in with each other, but technically they are former teammates when they were both at Alabama, so maybe there is some type of chemistry there between them. And he's just, Jalen, he does need kind of guys that can create that necessary separation for him to drop the ball in the bucket to. And Devontae is going to do that for him. So I think Devontae, he has so much talent. I think if there's any wide receiver I'm going to bet on Philadelphia to be successful this year, it is going to be him. And I think he will be the guy that will lead the amount of targets in the wide receiver group. But again, if Zach Ertz is going to be on the roster on week 1, my biggest concern is Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert are also going to get their number of share of targets in this offense. But Devontae Smith, to me, maybe he's at wide receiver 3 or 4 right now. As he gets comfortable in the offense and he can start getting more targets, I could see him working himself up to like a wide receiver 3, maybe wide receiver 2 by the middle of the year. He's somebody I'm very high on that I believe can be a productive rookie. Greg Ward, he's just been a solid guy for the Eagles the last couple of years. Nothing special, but he's a get the job type of guy, wide receiver, not worth drafting in fantasy. Jalen Reagor, everybody knows he completely struggled as a rookie, but he's a guy. I didn't think he was worth a day one pick, but I thought he was worth a day two pick. He got the talent to succeed in this league. So maybe he can put together a strong sophomore year. I don't think he's worth, obviously, I don't think he's worth drafting right now, but I would pay attention, look at his preseason reps, see if he's shown some improvement, see how the offense is going to use him. And if you see him out there maybe getting a lot of targets in week 1 or week 2, I could definitely see a scenario where you want to pick him up, add him to your bench, and then watch his role continue to unfold in the month of September. And then maybe he does emerge as a guy that either is maybe worth keeping on your bench that you can maybe slide in during bye weeks. So that is a name to watch in their wide receiver room. Taking a look at their notable backups, obviously Travis Fulgham's a guy that came on strong last year for Philadelphia. He might even end up earning some starting reps depending on the play of Jalen Reagor or maybe even Greg Ward, depending on how they want to line up the wide receivers this year. And people that watched my first YouTube video know I am a big fan of wide receivers that are entering year 3. And Travis Fulgham is entering year 3, so maybe that he does get enough snaps. Maybe he sees an uptick in targets and he has a big year 3 boom. He's a guy I think I could see myself maybe potentially drafting at the end of the drafts because of the year 3 thing. But if it does look like Jalen Reagor or Devontae Smith are going to be full-time starters, I'm probably not going to draft Travis Fulgham, but I am going to watch his situation unfold at the beginning of the year. And then the other guys are just going to be more rotational guys, and those guys I really don't have high expectations. JJ Arcega-Whiteside is technically a year 3 wide receiver, but he has so many guys in front of him. There's a chance he might not even be on the 53-man roster at the end of this. Well, no, it's not August yet, but at the end of August. So I don't have high expectations for him. But and then as far as the tight ends, I've kind of been already talking up Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Here's a couple stats though. I did pull on both of those guys. Here's one on Zach Ertz. Obviously, he did a lot of his production more like in 2018, 2019, but since 2018, he has the second most receptions at 240. He's got the third most receiving yards at 2,414, the third most receiving yards at 57 and a half. Third most receiving yards per game at 57.5, and the fifth most receiving touchdowns since 2018-15. And these are all among tight end stats, so these only consider tight ends. So he's been a highly productive tight end. Obviously last year he fell off. He's dealt with some injuries, I believe the last couple years. I know for sure last year he was kind of held back. So he's just a guy that, man, he's probably going to go high just because based on name value. I'm not really actively drafting Zach Ertz, but I could definitely see a scenario where you're going to want to draft him because he's probably going to see a good, decent amount of targets in Philadelphia. But then you're also kind of betting on like, hey, I'm going to take him. I might have to deal with him sharing targets with Dallas Goedert, but maybe what I can bet on is by the time it gets to, September, October, he's on a new roster. He's that team's leading tight end, and then all of a sudden maybe he becomes a tight end 1 type of player again in terms of fantasy football. Dallas Goedert is a guy I'm really high on, even though he's been splitting time with Zach Ertz the last 3 seasons. Since 2018, he's tied for the 8th most receiving touchdowns at 12. He's tied for the 10th most receptions at 137. So he's been productive even with Zach Ertz. I think he's going to take the next step in his play this year. If I was going to draft one of these guys, I'm going to draft Dallas Goedert because I think you can get him a little bit more of a discount compared to Ertz just because he doesn't have the name value of Ertz, especially when you play in these home leagues. And then he's a guy, whenever Ertz has been out, he's a tight end 1. So if Ertz ends up getting traded, I think he's going to have a big season in terms of fantasy and be a tight end 1 throughout the year. So that's why I would be willing to gamble on Dallas Goedert because he can produce with Ertz, and then his numbers will go up if Ertz were to get traded. But yeah, that's the offense overall. Oh, taking a look at their offensive line really quick. They got some. They got a an average offensive line. As long as these guys can stay healthy. Obviously, I mean, I would maybe above average offensive line. I mean, Jason Kelsey's kind of getting up there, but he's still a good center. Lane Johnson's a really great right tackle. Brandon Brooks missed last year because of an injury. He's an all-pro type of guard. Jordan Mailata, he's pretty good, and then Isaac Siumola will get the job done. So, I mean, that's a pretty good offensive line, but they do need to stay healthy. This offensive line has been cursed for the last 3 years in terms of injuries. So, if injuries start to pile up, I mean, they got some youth guys behind them that can step in, but things can get ugly quick if this offensive line gets beat up. But I mean, it's good enough though to help move the ball and keep Jalen in a strong strong pocket so he has time to throw. Overall with this offense though, I've kind of said it earlier. I just see this offense can be there's going to be some inconsistencies. Jalen, like I mentioned, Jalen doesn't have that full skill set that you want your quarterback to kind of manipulate the ball all throughout the field. And then you're counting on young wide receivers that have the talent, a mixture with guys that don't really have a lot of above average type of talent at the wide receiver position. So there's that kind of concern that the wide receivers are going to hold them back at times. But if Miles Sanders can take that next step this year, and Devontae Smith can deliver right away, Jalen Reagor takes that sophomore step, and then those tight ends produce. I mean, I can see this offense having a stretch of times where they're being highly productive. But again, it's either going to be a very inconsistent offense, or I think they're going to have their moments where they're able to move the ball and put up some points. We'll quickly moving on to the defense here. Their defense, again, this is projected starters from Jack Duspo. And just to give Jack I'll talk about that here later, because let me just go run down this really quick. Their strongest point on the Eagles defense is their defensive front. Brandon Graham, the veteran DN rusher, since 2018, he actually has the sixth most tackles for loss at 37. Fletcher Cox is still there. Javon Hargrave, who was a good signing from the Steelers. He just I think he was in and out of the lineup dealing with injuries last year. And then Derek Barnett. Those guys are pretty good defensive front, but these, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox are getting up there in age, so you got to hope that their talent isn't starting to diminish as we head into this year. And they got Ryan Kerrigan from Washington. He's up there in age as well. Josh Sweat is a guy that can get after the quarterback. I would not be surprised if he gets a significant amount of snaps this year, depending on how they want to utilize him in pass rushing situations. So that is definitely their strongest group. I will say though, if any of those guys start to get banged up, I mean this group lacks a lot of experience behind them, so you'll be depending on a lot of youth. And there's definitely a scenario where those guys are starting to have to miss any time out of the lineup, that this defense can get carved up on the running on the ground, and that's because their linebacker group is below average. They'll struggle to coverage. I mean, I like TJ Edwards. That's because he's from Wisconsin, and I was pretty high on him in the draft class. But these guys are going to struggle to kind of stop the run. They're going to struggle to stop the pass. So this is a team where, if the play isn't up to par in the defensive front, teams are going to run all over them, and then they're going to pick them apart in the middle of the defense with tight ends and slot wide receivers. That's how this defense is going to have their struggles this year. Now their secondary, Darius Slay obviously is a complete stud. This is what I was alluding to here at the beginning. He has Craig James in there as a starter, but to be fair, we had to submit all of our work on the Prospect Encyclopedia at the beginning of July. So he doesn't have Steven Nelson on there, but I do have him as technically a notable backup. I would expect Steven Nelson to start opposite of Darius Slay. So that's a pretty decent cornerback tandem. Steven Nelson would have to prove that last year his play that dropped off was more of a fluke than not. But either way, that's a decent, solid cornerback group. Rodney McLeod and Anthony Harris. It's a pretty decent safety group. It's an okay secondary, but they'll be asking a lot out of their secondary to make up for the lack of the coverage ability of their linebackers. I don't think this defense really meshes that well. That's my biggest problem. Like I said, I think they're going to have struggles stopping the run this year, and I think teams are going to pick them apart in that short to intermediate range, and they're going to get a lot of yards after the catch against this defense. And then as far as if I'm going to stream them week 1, they got the Falcons. If you go tune into my Falcons preview video, if you haven't yet, I think that's an offense that's going to be able to move the ball. So I'm not really high on trying to stream the Eagles defense against the Falcons in week 1. And then overall, yeah, their defense though, like I said, the defensive front's their strongest point. Weak linebacker group, okay secondary, and then if you look at those notable backups, you see all those stars on the name. That means they have a lot of inexperience behind them. So if injuries start to pile up, they're already, I think, going to struggle as it is, but then they'll be really bad and they'll get picked apart throughout the season if they do get hit with the injury bug on that side of the group. But yeah, that's the preview of the offense and defense. Overall, I mean, this Eagles team, they're not terrible. They're not going to be like lay down and let everybody run all over us this year. But I do think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. In terms of records, this might be one of those teams that are like competitive, but their record doesn't show it. I don't know how to explain that. Every year there's always like a team that has like maybe like 4, 5, 6 wins. But then it's like it comes out at the end of the season like, oh, this so-and-so team, they only won like 5 games, but they lost like 6 one-score games. That's probably going to be this Eagles team, I feel like. I think, like I mentioned, I think their offense, I think they're going to have times this year where they're moving the ball, they're putting up points, but I can see this offense being very inconsistent as well, just because of how youthful it is. And I do have my questions around the quarterback play as far as if it's going to be consistently moving the ball down the field, and if defenses are going to be able to scheme around what they will be planning on doing this season. And then their defense, I think, is going to struggle this year. I think they're going to struggle to stop the run, and I've said this already like 3 or 4 times already. I think the quarterbacks are going to pick them apart in the middle of the field with their passing attack. It's a team that I think it's definitely in a rebuilding year, a retooling year. They got to figure out their future, who's going to be on the team in 2022. I don't think they're going to be able to compete for a playoff spot this year, because I think the other teams in their divisions have taken more steps forward while they have taken a step backwards before the year. And I think they're going to get, I can see them get to about anywhere between, I think I already just said that, 4 to 6 wins, I think, is what I think Philadelphia is going to do this year. It's this sort of totally rebuilding, retooling year for the Eagles. But yeah, that's my video today, guys. I hope you did enjoy this. Please hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. Please go tell a friend to tune in and hear my thoughts on the Philadelphia Eagles and all other 31 NFL teams. I'm going to be continuing to do this. My next team I plan on doing, which I'm going in the draft order, so let's see if my brain serves me right. I believe the 7th pick this year was the Lions. So I believe I'll be doing the Lions on my next video. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You'll find out either way. But yeah, I do plan on doing that one tomorrow. Other than that, guys, please enjoy the rest of your day and keep on watching these preview videos, and check out any other videos on my YouTube channel that you haven't yet. Peace out.